Before we begin today, I just want to give a quick apology for the sound quality of my mic. During this episode, there was a technical difficulty and we just had to go with my laptop's internal mic. So the quality won't be as good, and I apologise, but it should all be sorted for next week's episode. Thanks.
I'm Sam LeGassick.
And I'm Dreadful Dan Gallagher. And we're two old buddies that have lived our life at the edge of the mainstream.
So come join us where things are a little odd. This is the
You've got to believe.
It's alive! It's loose!
This earth of yours will be reduced to a burned-out cinder.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Oddcast, Movies, Music, and Gaming. And here with me is Dreadful Dan G. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Sam, and hello, human oddities.
The oddballs of the world. How's your week been, Dan? What have you been? Have you been playing, watching, listening to anything in particular?
Loads, actually. Yeah, been listening to a lot of music. Do you know the band The Tubes?
I don't know. I don't think so.
They're this band that I think I heard one song and I quite liked it. So I bought the album it was from. And at that point, I got into like a weird kind of obsessive mindset of every time I saw one of their albums, I just think, oh, Tubes are a band that I collect. And I just buy it. So I've got too many records and I had to go through and try and take some stuff out. And I just thought, The Tubes, I'm not convinced I've never listened to any of these albums that I've bought. So I just went, I'm going to get rid of The Tubes. But I'm going to listen to them before I get rid of them. So I've been listening to every single album by The Tubes. They're from, I think the first album's 1975. So it's like this kind of big camp glam rock, kind of like Rocky Horror style kind of music with like power pop and some kind of like Broadway theatrics and stuff. They're all right.
Okay.
They're all right. White Punks on Dope is the good song that I like.
It's the good song.
I've been listening to a lot of Tubes, probably more Tubes than any other person in 2020 is listening to.
You know what, Dan? YouTube.
I will. I will.
And it's probably a better joke in there somewhere, to be honest, but that's all I can think of at the spur of the moment.
Aside from the Tubes, been listening to a band called The Swirlies.
Nope.
Me neither. I was like, nope. But they're from 1993 indie rock band. And this like album, it's called Blonde Tongue Audio Baton.
Right.
It's like it's been pitch perfectly recorded for my personal tastes. It's just the right kind of balance of kind of like noisy angularity with nice pop melodies. Just a really good indie pop album that I missed. I'd never heard of the band before. So that was nice. Quite excited about that.
Have you heard of this term, what was it I read the other day? Indie landfill, I think is what it's called.
No, what's that?
Apparently, I think it's Vice. I've been making a thing of it, but it was it's a term for basically, and I might be completely wrong because I skimmed it, but I like the idea of it. It's post-Britpop, like indie, basically, like the music scene where it's just like all these shitty indie bands basically came out of nowhere. And we're doing basically the same thing. And yeah, it's from that era.
Well, like British.
The 2000s. Yeah, mainly British or whatever, or just like, yeah, post.
Yeah, there was a lot
of that scene.
A lot of
bands. But yeah, indie landfill indie or something like that. Just the fact that it was just like, just tons of it. And it was mostly shit, which I can see.
I can remember all that. This predates that anyway. These are like, American collegiate kind of band, 1993. So It's kind of Pixies-ish, I suppose, but a bit more, probably a bit more poppy.
Okay. Have you been watching anything?
I saw Rebecca for the first time.
Oh yeah,
the Hitchcock film.
Hitchcock. It's great.
Been
I like
waiting
that film.
on that. For some reason, I decided I had high expectations, so I've been sitting on it for years. I watched it, and unsurprisingly, didn't meet my huge expectations, but I did really enjoy it.
Oh really? Yeah. I mean, it's not like his best, but I do really like it. I think I saw it at the cinema, not when it came out.
In 1940.
Cool. I actually did been watching a bit of stuff. I saw been watching a series called Succession. Have you heard of that?
I think
it's on over here. It's on Sky Atlantic, but it's an HBO thing. And it's Brian Cox is basically the only real famous face in it, and he's like a kind of Rupert Murdoch style, like, you know, media mogul who is like, and it's sort of like this kind of almost Shakespearean kind of like family drama about how they're all trying to fuck each other over. And they're despicable, like, it's just a whole group of really nasty, rich people. But it's by Jesse Armstrong, who used to work on Peep Show.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's like, I want to say he's the showrunner. He's definitely the writer, one of the writers, but it's really good. It's probably one of the best things I've seen on TV in a while, I would say. So yeah, highly recommended.
Is it a comedy?
It yet. No, it's a drama, but there are comedy moments in it.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, it's definitely worth watching. One thing you might be interested in that I saw was the Bill and Ted Face the Music, new Bill and Ted movie.
Yeah. So has that been released, like dumped onto the internet then or something?
Yeah, it's on VOD, and I think it's coming out in cinemas in next week or whatever, or a week or so from when this was released, I think. And yeah, it wasn't very good. It was actually awful, which is a bit of a shame. It's one of those things where, like, I'm watching it going, what is going on? Like, as well, it's like about their and there's no spoil, I won't spoil it, but their daughters are in it, which is saying at the beginning, and their whole like daughters plot, there's just all these kind of stories going on, they're all terrible, and yeah, the daughter's plot is just like dire, like the actresses are terrible, and I'm just watching it going like, I get what they're doing, and it would be cool if they were like set up more as like better characters rather than just trying to be a bit of a carbon copy of, you know, teenage Bill and Ted. But yeah, it was just, it looked cheap as fuck as well.
Wow.
But funny enough, like watching it, Alex Winter, who plays Bill, it was really good in it, and I was thinking, man, he should have done more. Like, he basically quit acting, and it's a shame because I was watching it going like, man, he's like good, it's funny, it's kind of showing up Keanu Reeves, which is saying a lot these days, seeing as Keanu Reeves is still Mr. Popular.
Did you ever see his film called, what's it called? Freaked, I think.
Yeah, so I think that's the last thing he did. I have only seen clips of it. I've never actually watched the film.
Me neither. Might be worth a watch sometime.
Yeah, I think so. I remember watching it after that.
I think there's a bit of rose-tinted glasses with Bill and Ted. Like, I liked them when I was 10. I remember seeing the second film at the cinema. But I don't think they're that good. I mean, it's not like something like, you know, Ghostbusters or something, where there's a generation that, you know, people our age, I can go back and watch Ghostbusters and still appreciate it. Bill and Ted's a bit very, you know, younger and it's more.
Yeah, we won't go too much into it, but yeah, I always thought the first film was like, okay, does its job. Second film was more stylized, and I quite liked that. I quite liked it. It just went off on one.
Yeah,
it's wacky, like trans-dimensional, like comedy, and I enjoyed that aspect of it.
Oh, good times.
Yeah, but this one, it was like just stupid. It's ridiculous, and also just bad ending. Like, I liked how the second one ended as well. But the whole thing of it, I was like, I can really do with this. Like, it's a feel good. You know, their whole like thing is just like they're two idiots that are just so ridiculously like likable and positive about everything.
Yeah.
For the most part, that you kind of just go with it because they're just quite endearing. I'm like, yeah, could do with a bit of that in this day and age. You know, just two happy idiots just kind of going about their happy-go-lucky, sorry.
That's why people listen to this show.
Yeah, two idiots, happy-go-lucky. Miserable-go-lucky, more like. The other thing, did I tell you I watched the Grudge TV series on Netflix?
No.
I'm not going to spend too long on it.
Based on the film?
Yeah, well, everything's based on that. It's based on like one. It's the same house. And they've done a Grudge. They released a new Grudge film last year.
Right.
It's the same fucking house each time. But this one was a TV series where it kind of time jumps a little bit, and it's about. I've seen the whole thing. I don't really know what it's about. It's like different stories basically that are based around the house. Now they're kind of intertwined. But it got a really good write-up on some of the reviews of it. I was just so bored. It's fucking dreadful. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. The only other thing I did was I watched Idols did a virtual gig at the weekend.
Oh yeah,
did 3 of them, and I've watched 1.5 of them. And I think I'm if I'm quick with this, I might be able to catch the rest of it tonight before they expire from on demand. And it was pretty good. It was all right, but it's a bit weird watching them just they're in Abbey Road, just kind of in a studio and doing their thing, and it's like just silence after they obviously finish a song.
Yeah, I'm not into. I don't think I'm really into it. I mean, that existed before lockdown. Obviously, bands doing in studio sessions.
Yeah,
and that's quite good fun. Like watching those, but don't want to pay for them.
Well, this is it. So it's kind of like I see it as like kind of just showing a bit of support, and I was also hoping to hear some stuff off the new album. Which I haven't yet, only just what they've already released, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So okay, well that's it, kind of going through little update on what we're doing this week.
I've got another band for you.
Oh, go on, yeah.
Porridge Radio.
No, don't know.
Been listening to their album called Every Bad. I think it's just been nominated for a Mercury Prize, maybe.
Right.
Little Brighton indie pop weirdo band.
Indie landfill.
It is a little bit landfill. It's quite good. I enjoyed it, but I did get a kind of like a bit of deja vu, and also kind of a little bit of jadedness, thinking, "Oh, look at them doing their indie pop. They don't know any better." It was pretty good and quite nice to if they have got a Mercury Prize nomination, which I might have just made up, but if they have, then that's pretty good for them because they are just like a little Brighton band, I think.
Porridge Radio.
Yeah.
Crap name.
I thought you'd hate it.
So it's the classic, like just go to a dictionary and just put 2 words together. It's fucking stupid. Call yourself Porridge and then base it on the TV series of the same name.
That'd be great.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe there's a radio station in that I'm unaware of that is popular. So this week we're going to be talking about the game The Last of Us 2.
I wish things were different.
Ellie!
But they ain't.
Please stop! I'm leaving tomorrow.
To do this smart, we'd be leaving Jackson vulnerable.
Do they just get to get away with this?
How'd you find us?
You can't stop this.
I want what you want. But not at any cost. I really hope you make it.
I have to finish it.
There's a cost.
We could have killed you. Maybe you should have.
Right, so just so people don't get too worried, we'll spend the first half or whatever of this podcast just going through the general stuff of the game. We won't talk about any of the story stuff from Last of Us 1 or 2 until we tell you, and there'll be a break so that you can switch off or come back to later, whatever you want to do, so you don't ruin the story for yourselves. But so why is this odd? Seeing as it's one of the best-selling games of all time, maybe. Well, it's odd in a sense of the subject matter is odd in that it's a post-apocalyptic world where there's zombies made of fungus, basically, that will come and attack you, which is quite cool in itself. And I guess that's odd enough. But the real oddity is that it's actually really good, in my opinion. But in terms of it's not that anti-mainstream, let's say, but I basically completed it recently. I wanted to talk about it, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit by doing that. Dan, what do you know about Last of Us 2, if anything?
Not all that much. People should be aware I've not played the game. I've not played the first game. I don't really play many games. But I've had a look at the maelstrom of controversy surrounding this game online. So I'm aware that it's been quite divisive. I've got a broad idea of what the plot's about, some of this character arc stuff that people are complaining about. My first look at a bit of gameplay, I thought it does look a bit derivative to me. It's like kind of like, here we go, post-apocalyptic kind of world, people running around, kill some monsters, which are increasingly looking the same. I swear the monsters here look the same as in that game that we spoke about a few weeks ago. They've got this kind of like Lovecraftian look.
Bloodborne.
Where like their head will split into like a seed pod with no eyes, which we're seeing in games, seeing it in Stranger Things. It's character design, it's everywhere. But that was my sort of initial, just, aesthetically, I just thought, there we go. But yeah, I haven't played it, so you tell me I'm wrong.
I'll tell you something. So for those that don't know, Last of Us 2 is obviously a sequel to Last of Us 1. This is the kind of like, real juicy stuff that you get here on this podcast. But it was released this year. It's a PlayStation exclusive, released on the PS4. It's by Naughty Dog, who did probably more famous for the Uncharted series. And this was directed by Neil Druckmann from Naughty Dog, who also did Uncharted 4, and he did the first Last of Us as well. And it's basically a third-person action game, I guess you could call it. It's heavily reliant, well, you can play it how you want, but it's heavily reliant really on stealth to kind of get through. And basically, in a nutshell, it's a world where there has been a virus, much like what's kind of going on now. And people are basically turning into these like zombie monsters. And the idea is that you have to like survive this world. I won't go into what the actual proper story is, but there are characters involved, and there's a reason why you're kind of out in the wild trying to get generally from A to B. And that's basically it. So like with things like The Walking Dead, the monsters generally, or the zombies, whatever, are generally not your problem. The humans are.
Bastards.
Other factions and all this stuff. That's where it gets difficult. But that's part of the beauty of it. So, I mean, Dan, what's actually quite interesting is in terms of just talking about I'm going to call them zombies, but they have like different names. There's, depending on how infected you are. So like the first stage is, you're a runner, I think they're called. And that's basically where you become like your classic kind of running zombie, right? But, so you've just got infected, you can still see. So if they see you, they'll scream and run for you. They're not as powerful because they're just people. They're just flailing hands at you or whatever. They're not using anything. They're just hitting you and trying to bite you. And then you've got clickers who are a bit more advanced. And this is kind of the same with both games. For the clickers, well, basically they're the ones whose heads are just completely fucked. So, and they'll basically kill you if they get close to you in one shot. But they can't see you, so they go by sound and they go by like sonar, basically. So if they kind of like let out this scream and you're standing in front of them, they will essentially see you. There are other enemy types, which I guess I can go through here. It's not really giving anything away. There's like bloaters from the first game, which I don't think were in the second game, but they're basically big fat zombies who will throw pustules at you, trying to infect you. You've got some of the new stuff. You've got like what's called a shambler, which is kind of the same as the big fat ones, but they're quite hard to take down, and they kind of give off this like gas, and they move a bit quicker. And then you've got these new enemies, which maybe I'll keep these other new enemies in the story section because they're pretty cool. But yeah, so you've got these different types of enemy depending on how infected you've got or whatever. And and then you've got the human side, and you're all in different, they're in different groups, and some are working together and some not so much. And that's kind of the basis for it. I won't go into the story a bit too much, but the idea is that you're trying to go through this world and you're picking things up along the way. So there's a lot of like reading notes. There's things like there's like safes that you need to like decode by looking around for like notes or whatever, and you can get like items through that. But what will happen is that you're kind of going around finding everyday items, and then you choose how you use them. So for instance, you can, I think it's used like alcohol, I suppose, or and like a tape, I think it is, and you can use it for a health kit, or you can use the alcohol and use it with a bottle, and you've got a Molotov cocktail.
Can you drink
things
it?
like that? No one drinks a Molotov cocktail.
No, the alcohol.
Yeah, you can't drink it. No. Sorry, you don't really see them drink anything actually when I think about it. They eat like snack bars. Maybe they do drink stuff, I can't remember. But so you kind of choose how you want to use it. I guess the main problem I had with it was that I was always pretty much full of this equipment throughout the entire thing. It was only, I'd say probably 10 times, maybe less, where I was like finding myself like out of items. But yeah, as you go along, you kind of unlock more uses. You find these survival manuals, which means that you have like an upgrade tree, and you have pills, which you find along the way, which allow you to spend them in order to upgrade your upgrade tree. So you can do more, you can craft faster, you can do X, Y, Z. And all that's fine. There's a lot of like, you can upgrade your weapon with like parts that you find along the way. And like make it reload faster, or put a scope on it, or fire rate up, make it more powerful, whatever. Do things like this, which is pretty cool. You find ammunition along the way. You also get like a bow and arrow. You could craft arrows and all this. So there's all these kind of different options that you have, which is fine, which is good. You can also find like bottles and bricks, which are quite very abundant in the world, and you can use them to stun people or to like create a noise diversion, things like that, which is quite interesting. So you've got all these different ways to kind of tackle the world that is presented to you. But the idea is that you're kind of low on stuff, so you need to use things quite wisely. And I guess that was kind of my problem, is I found it with both games really, but with this one in particular, I was never at a loss. I always kind of had ammo, I always had stuff to craft. And there's like an element where like in the first game, you would craft these shivs, basically knives. And there was always a thing of like, you could use them to kill a clicker. If it like grabbed you and you had a shiv, you could just kill it and then you don't have to worry about it. Or you can stealth kill them and use it that way. Or you can save it. And if you go past a door that's locked, sometimes you're able to shiv it. and then if you open it, then there's loads of like stuff inside. And they took away that mechanic, which is a bit annoying because I was like, it's quite good to like weigh up whether it's worth killing a clicker or whatever, or save it in the hope that you come across somewhere where you get to use it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I've read that a lot of people felt that there was far too much gratuitous violence in this one, which maybe then makes sense, or that they were forced into some of this like more extreme revenge killing.
Yeah.
So what you're saying suggests that you want to sneak around and use your stealth. But actually, you're in a position where you've got so much ammo, you just feel obliged just to wail away.
Yeah, well, there was like, there's a lot of violence that happens with it. I mean, it's kind of part of the story, which we'll get onto as well. But when it got to like the last level, let's say, I didn't use stealth at all. I just wanted to get it done. And I kind of blitzed my way through it just using all the ammo I had. And I was like, this is so much more satisfying than how I've been playing it for the entire like fucking 30 odd hours of being like really trying to be as stealth as possible. But that's part of it. It's like the idea is that you don't want to, you should be using stealth because it's like, you know, whatever, 20 guys or whatever, just kind of looking for you. You're not going to, it's not supposed to be like a power fantasy too much, even though you're quite powerful. But the main problem from the first game and for this one is that the real gamey part of it is something called listen mode, basically, where you hold down R1 and on your screen in yellow, you'll see like the people moving, which means it's basically like a radar thing. So if you're like in a room, you press R1 and you can see where they are positioned in like the next room, which obviously in real life, let's say, I know it's a game, you can't just do that. So it's that's the real kind of gamey thing about it. But I know there's an element where you don't have to use it. For instance, you don't have to use it at all if you don't want to. But obviously, I'm going to use whatever options I'm given to kind of get through.
Why do they give you that then? Does it not make it too easy?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's I don't know. It's just a weird thing to kind of put in, but at the same time, I needed it.
Was it in the first game?
It was in the first game as well. And I guess like gameplay wise, that's kind of one critique I had about this game, is that it followed way too closely to the first game. When it actually got into the gameplay bits and you're sneaking around, you're crafting stuff, it's exactly like the first game. There's no improvement on the gameplay side of it whatsoever, which was fine. But at the same time, I was like, yeah, I mean, you can do things like you can go prone, which is like laying down. So you can kind of go through grass, like laying down. That's new, I think. There's a bit of like jumping and platforming a little bit, which is kind of new, I guess. There's it's a lot more open world than the first game. It's not open world really at all. There's one level in particular when you're in Seattle and you can kind of go do different places. And I thought, okay, it's interesting. That is the only time that you do it really throughout the entire game, but it's a lot more of an open area. So you might come in from one bit and then make your own way to the other side of the map. You don't, it's large enough that you don't have to necessarily, you're not being driven down a corridor or anything like that. You can kind of decide how you want to approach it, which is a bit different that you weren't able to do before. But yeah, it's very much the same as the first game. There's not really been that much of an improvement. There's different weapons and all that, sure. But yeah, apart from that, it's pretty much the same game.
So why would you shell out and get it if you were a fan of the first game? Presumably, it's the same mechanic, then they've hung all of their hopes on creating better characters and a new, fresh, engaging story.
Well, that's just it. Yeah, which they've done. And also, like, it's not a bad mechanic. So, like, just doing more of that, it's not necessarily like a bad thing. But that's basically the kind of gameplay side of it. And a little bit more about the background to the game itself, I guess. There was a lot of, regardless of the story, there was a lot of controversy about how Naughty Dog put a lot of strain, during the crunch, which is like when a game is about to be released and it's all hands on deck, and that like 12-hour work days were basically the norm. And the truth be told, like you can see it. So like the graphics are great, they're amazing, but every little detail of this entire world, and it is a big game, has been thought about and to a painstaking detail. And there's a part of me which is like, maybe, they could have like not done it in so much detail and probably saved someone having a heart attack or something like that, or have people have a better quality of life.
I want people to have suffered for me to enjoy a good bit of entertainment.
Yeah,
someone hasn't
definitely would have got it.
Spent a week shitting in a bucket, living off of takeaway pizza, then I'm not going to play that game.
No, fair enough. Well, it's here. Like, it is ridiculously detailed, but it's great. It's super impressive just for that alone.
What kind of detail? Give us an example of some of that hard.
Well, it's like, for instance, you go through like various like hotels or rooms and all this, and there's like computer games will usually use like the same assets.
Yeah.
So like they've got a bed asset and they'll just use the same bed asset. But all these are completely different and they're all like lived in, they've all been thought about. And you can walk around some of these places, hotel rooms, and I know there's like notes which will tell you a bit of story, but you can just literally look around and see things on like whiteboards and see like photos and like how they've set up whatever. And it's just, it feels like lived in. It feels like it's not like, here's a table. There'll be like a table with like a few cups knocked over.
Stock.
Yeah. And it's like just that amount of detail. You can just stare at it for ages. And it's just super. Like they've got tons of different shops. They've got like arcades and all this stuff. Everything's been meticulously thought about. Like, they've got like, you go to like a music shop, a guitar shop and all this stuff. And there's not another one in the whole game, but this whole room is just been, it's literally a guitar shop. And it's like, something like that. It's just a detail of just like, you might not even go into it. It's there. It's not necessary for you to go into it to do what you need to do. But they've thought about it.
I did see almost unanimous praise. Even people that hate the game did say it looks brilliant, and that visual aspect of it is amazing, and so much to explore in that regard.
It is, yeah, and it just looks incredible. Like, so I've got a PS4 Pro, and my fan on it was going fucking mental just because of having to like process this entire game instead of playing it. But everything about it, the acting is really good. We'll kind of get into that a bit more on the story side of things. And yeah, so it's one of the best-selling PS4 games, and it's the fastest-selling PS4, well, Sony maybe exclusive that they've done, which is interesting. Which just shows like how popular it actually was.
And yet, there's so many bad reviews from gamers and a lot of vitriol. So what's gone wrong? Because everything sounds good so far.
Yeah, so basically what happened was before the game came out, there was a big leak, and the leak included the story, the entire story. I think some gameplay was leaked as well, but the thing is I kept away from it because I didn't want anything ruined for me.
Yeah.
But the general vibe I was getting was that the fact that it was dealing with like LGBTQ issues, and people thought it was too heavy-handed with that, and that it was too, let's say, too liberal, too lefty for a lot of people. The whole like white fragility or whatever, I don't know, whatever comes to mind. I mean, I'm not going to play the politics game with stuff like this, but I thought it was interesting how it's like people got so worked up about it, and like review bombed it on Metacritic, having not actually played the game but just telling the story. And there's one incident in particular which people just had a massive problem with, but we'll kind of get onto that on the story side of things. And we'll talk a little bit. So go on.
So people seem to have an issue as well, specifically around one character. No, so a character that was in the previous game, and how they're used in this game.
Yeah, which we'll get into because that's the big spoiler. But yeah, let's come on to that. But I think that's all we can kind of talk about without kind of going into the story too much now. We talked about the graphics, music's great, audio's great, acting's great. I guess if I had a criticism, which isn't going to spoil it, it's too long, I think.
How long does it take to complete this game?
Yeah, so it took me over 30 hours. I would say it probably took me about 32 hours. But it was one of those things where I was like, I thought it ended, I would say probably about 4 to 6 hours before it actually did. And I was like, oh, I thought this was the end, and it's totally not. I've got like loads to do. There's a few instances like that. And I think it could be cut down a little bit because it was still good, but it felt exhausting. That's the thing, playing it. It's an exhausting game to play. There's just so much. Like you walk out and you're into a new level and there are humans or there are clickers or whatever and all this stuff, and you're just like, okay, here we go. Like, gonna try and get my way through or kill them all or do whatever I'm doing.
A bit of button bashing.
Yeah, well, it's not button bashing. You have to be very, very careful about the whole thing. You have to take people down silently, quickly. They can see you. They'll alert other people. And, you know, there is one cool thing is that there's a certain faction called the Seraphites, I think they're called. And they're a bit different from people you encounter before this, but they communicate with each other through like whistling, which is weird because it means, one, you don't know what they're telling each other.
Yeah.
And which makes it unsettling in the first place. Yeah, two, it means that if you kill one of them or whatever, then they'll whistle for the others and all this. And then, you know, it's just that I can't remember the point I was making with this, but yeah, what was the original thing we were talking about? I totally forgot. I've just come from one.
I've forgotten. I can't remember. Did they go?
Yeah, as you're walking past.
You can understand that enough.
I think you were saying about like, just taking them out, guns blazing or whatever. But no, you can't. You can't do that. You have to be super careful about it because as soon as you kind of get seen, by the zombies, they run for you. They run at you, and you get overwhelmed super quick. As soon as the humans see you, they'll be shooting at you. Then all of a sudden you're in like a cover shooter situation, and they will flank you. And the AI is pretty good as well, so they will like intelligently try and come for you or like try and sneak up on you, which is good, which really, you know, works quite nicely. So yeah, it kind of forces you to think about more stealth over action because also you don't have many bullets. You're not, you know, it's very difficult to do that. But yeah, you get like a silencer that you can make out of like a bottle, basically, which is pretty cool, which I found quite useful. And you kind of have stealthy weapons. And I guess the only other thing is that there's a story moment where you have to there's a dog that you have to kill, but there are dogs in the actual game as well. It was only until afterwards till someone pointed out, it's like, I hate that you have to kill the dogs. Like, that's horrible. I was like, oh yeah, didn't even think about that. It just meant nothing to me. Just shooting a dog in the head.
One of the major, that is one of the major, seems to be sticking points for a lot of the criticism, actually.
What, killing dogs?
No, and again, maybe we'll come to this when we talk about the story and the character arc. But people saying that you're forced to start to disassociate with what people perceived or wanted to be the main lead and sort of character. and it forces you. You don't have an option, and it makes you go through an experience of like sort of playing with the dog.
Yeah.
Before you have to, you're forced to kill it, and then you're continuously sort of like made to feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
As the game goes on.
Yeah. Without giving too much away. Yeah, that's completely right. I mean, that's the problem, is that with games, people these days are used to having like a lot of agency. And with a game like this, it's not about that. It's about telling a story. And
it's like killing.
Well, that's
about killing.
Yeah. No. But that is kind of the problem with a game like this. It's a good thing and a bad thing. Because obviously they're telling the story they want to tell, but they do. Let's just say they kind of force you to do a lot. If that, they force you to make you feel uncomfortable, which is fine, and maybe that's part of it. But I can see why some people would have a problem with it. Put it that way. And I think that's kind of enough on the generalities of the game. I think maybe let's kind of get into a bit of the spoiler territory and let free reign all out. So if you haven't played the first or the second game, go play it, come back, and you can listen to the rest of this. Otherwise, come back
Oddcast
after
story time.
Yes, and we'll tell you about the lovely story of The Last of Us 2.
Hello, little kiddies. It's time for story time.
Story time.
And we go into some of the detail of the story.
And we're going to spoil everything.
Yeah.
We're going to spoil your mind and your dinner and your mum. So, yeah, we're going to go into the actual the games themselves. So, I guess what it's important to do is we'll just kind of go over the basis, what happened in the first game in terms of story. So, the idea is that you play Joel, whose daughter got killed during the initial wave of panic when this virus was kind of taking over everyone. And they were trying to get to safety. His daughter died. And so we kind of meet him a few years into this pandemic after, where most people are dead. And he basically plays this smuggler. He's just trying to survive with his girlfriend Tess, they're doing whatever. But there's this group called like the Fireflies, who are kind of seen as like a terrorist organization, but they're all about freedom from the oppressing army, I guess, or whatever, like running these quarantine zones. And so Joel is given this girl called Ellie, and she's immune to the virus. She got bit and she survived, and it looks like that she's immune to the virus, and she's the only one. So the idea is that the leader of the Fireflies, or whatever, one of them, is like, oh, can you take her to this hospital? I can't. I'm wounded. I need to stay here. You need to take her. It's really important. Like, humanity rests on your shoulders, kind of thing. And so he's like, yeah, fine. So him and Ellie travel across the entire country, basically, to get to Boston. So they go from, I believe they're going from Seattle to Boston, where they go through, and on the way they get into all these, like, it's basically like a road movie thing. They like meet like cannibals, and and they learn more about each other. And like Ellie's like this kid. She's only a kid or whatever. So she's all like positive and like a bit like chipper. and all that. Where Joel's this like, it's like True Grit style. Like he's
grizzled
like,
old.
Yeah, exactly. He's all like fucked up just with life, and he's sick of it all. And Ellie's a little bit of like one like kind of daughter figure, and also she's this little ray of sunshine in his like otherwise bleak existence that he's been currently like eking out. And anyway, so what happens is they go to you finally get there with her, and he's all like, oh, thank God we made it. And they're like, yeah, the problem is that we need to get this thing in Ellie's brain. And in order to do that, we have to kill her during the operation. And Joel's like, fuck that. So anyway, he's like, have you told her? And they're like, no, she's under now. She's in the surgery now. So basically you as Joel go into like fucking, you go like Stallone style or something. You kill everyone at this hospital, including the doctors and everyone. You pick Ellie up, you put her in a car, you drive her out of there, and you get fucking hell out of Dodge. So you go back, and then there's this nice, the game ends with this nice little moment where you're kind of just walking around in the woods, and she's like, actually, I can't remember the exact thing, I'm going to mess this up, but she says something like, oh, what happened back there really with the Fireflies? Like you told me there were other people, but I haven't seen anyone like that. We haven't heard of this cure. You wouldn't lie to me, would you? Kind of thing. He's like, no. He's like, is that the truth? So yeah. So it ends on that, and that's the end of the game. So like, you think that he might actually tell her the truth, but he is like steadfast, like lying to her, like saying that the cure didn't work or whatever, so we got you out of there. When really
he likes to protect her.
Yeah, he does it to protect her, but also he can't go through. It's quite a selfish act in the sense of he can't lose another daughter. And like a lot of people say how it's about consent as well. The fact that the choice was taken away from her and it was decided by like her dad, essentially, or father figure.
The choice to die.
Yeah, she didn't even get the choice to like give herself up for the good of humanity or not. He just made that decision for her. And all that's quite interesting. Through violence as well, because he killed everyone there. But yeah, it's really, so that for me was like, that whole final bit was like really knocked me for six, because it was like you spent all this time with this girl and you are going it thinking, and that's the thing, right? Like on paper, you'd be like, yeah, sacrifice one person to save the many, right? Obviously, when it comes down to it, you as Joel, you're going around killing everyone. And you're like, yeah, fuck them. Like, you do actually care about the fact they've had to kill this little girl for something that you don't even know might work or not.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, so you're with him, like thinking, fuck these guys, I'm getting out of here. And there is one bit where you walk into the doctor's surgery with your gun and he's like just standing there going, oh no, you don't understand. This is really important. And you can't do anything until you shoot him. So then you shoot him dead, pick her up, when you take it, you take her and you get out of there. Now, the thing is that the consequences of that now play into the second game. So where the second game opens up, a few years have moved on. Ellie's a bit older, and you're kind of seeing how she's trying to, she's having problems with Joel, which you find out later down the line. It's basically because she found out what happened. And he tells her the truth, because she's like, if you tell me the truth, I'll stay. But if I find out you're lying, I'm going to leave and I'll never see you again. So he tells her the truth. And this happens halfway through the game. You see his flashback. And so this has happened after that, where she's basically fucked off with him. The fact that he killed everyone and let her live when she felt like she should have had the choice, basically, that she was meant to like save the world, or whatever. And now she can't do that, because the problem is that there's no one that can, there's no doctors left that can do that kind of thing. So it's like, oh, well, she still can. It's like, well, no, not unless, you're training someone up to be, it's a way of training up these guys to be doctors, to be brain surgeons. Shit, I don't think it's happening in a post-apocalypse. Anyway, so that's so it's a little bit after that. And so the relationship is strained. He's like giving her, there's a bit where he gives her a guitar and he's like, I'll teach you how to play. And the guitar becomes the motif throughout the whole thing that like defines their relationship a little bit. So yeah, you're kind of playing that, and she's having some like, young adult problems, and the fact that she's gay, And she kissed this girl and she's not sure if this girl even likes her. And then they kind of go off and they talk about it. And then suddenly it cuts and you're playing as this other girl called Abby, who's just, who's with some other people, and you try and escape from the clickers. You bump into Joel and his brother Tommy, who was in the first game as well. And they save you. And then basically, once they save you, you turn on Joel and you find out that Joel is the one that you've been after. And you beat him to death with a golf club, quite brutally. It's very graphic. And Ellie tries to come in and save when she's looking for Joel, and she's forced to just watch as Joel gets literally smacked in the eye and the head with a golf club until he dies. So at that point, you're like made to fucking hate this girl, Abby. And you're like, whatever the fuck is happening, I'm going to find her and I'm going to kill her. So the game continues with you as Ellie. You're like, I'm going to find this girl, Abby. I'm going to kill her. And that's basically, that is the first half of the game, is essentially you trying to find Abby over the course of whatever it is, 3 or 4 days. You go with Dina, who's the girl that you kissed. You find out that she's pregnant with this other guy's kid. And and Tommy, the brother, has gone off, and it becomes a kind of toss up between like, do you want to keep going around killing everyone? Like, if we find Tommy, let's go home. Forget about Abby. And she's like, yeah, fine. And then it gets to a point, literally kind of crossroads, where they're like, oh, we think Tommy's over here. And she's like, yeah, but Abby's probably over here. And this guy's like, yeah, but we're here for Tommy, remember? We're going home. We're going to get Tommy and go home. And she's like, yeah, but Tommy's after Abby, so I'm going to go where I think Abby is. And you're just like, oh, here we go. Like, she's totally not fucking over it. She totally wants to kill Abby. And then basically you go over there to this aquarium, and there's these 2 people arguing, and you shoot them. You have an argument with them, you shoot them, and you shoot a dog on the way there as well, which is what we're talking about. And then you find out the woman was pregnant, and you're like, oh, fuck. So you're like, oh, fuck it, I've just killed a pregnant woman. And then Tommy turns up and they take you away. And then basically after that bit, you are in a theatre, which you've kind of used as your base for the moment. And there's lots of stuff in between this, by the way. You're kind of finding people to get to Abby and all this, and all these different levels. And you're skulking around and you're finding out about these Seraphites, who are these weird religious nuts. And Abby's part of they're called the Wolves, which they're the Washington Liberation Front, WLF. And you're trying to kill all these people as you're trying to get to her. Then anyway, at that halfway point, your mate is shot. And then you see Abby appear with a gun against Tommy's head going, you killed all my friends, you fucking bitch, or whatever. And she's like, fuck. Okay. And then it cuts. Then all of a sudden, you're playing as Abby. And that is where people had a problem with it, because it's like, you spent this whole time on a revenge mission to try and get her for killing Joel, and then you're being forced to play with her. Now, they've done it cleverly in that you start off by playing Abby as like a kid. Not a kid, but like much younger. And she's trying to look for her dad. And basically you find out that this is on the day of when Joel brought Ellie in to the hospital. So the doctor that you killed, who was operating on Ellie when you walk in as Joel and kill him in the first game, is Abby's dad.
Right.
So and because you've killed like all the fucking fireflies as well, like on your way in the first game, she's like on a revenge mission to kill Joel for killing her dad. And not only that, but obviously like killing any hope that humanity had of finding a cure for this disease. So then this kind of cycle of violence begins to appear. So you play as Abby for a while, and basically Abby finds out that her ex-boyfriend, this guy called Owen, is being chased down by her group because he shot and killed one of their own. So you're like, okay, this doesn't sound right, so I'm going to go and search for him. So you kind of go against your leader's wishes to go and search for your ex-boyfriend. And as you do so, there's this cool bit in like a forest where like it's nighttime and you're strung up by these like religious nuts, and they're like hanging you. And then these 2 Seraphites, who are like rebels basically, are about to get killed, and you manage to, with the help of them, kill your captors, and you run through the forest, and that's a really cool bit. You're getting chased by all these zombie things, and there's like a bit where you're just stuck in a house and they're trying to open it for you, and you're just getting like all these fucking zombie things are coming at you, and it's one of those moments which just sucks up all your ammo, and you're like stressing out because it's like so fucking intense. It's really good. It's all at night time. It feels really claustrophobic. And anyway, you kind of you basically find Owen, and you go back to help out these rebel Seraphites, and you basically try and help them get back to this aquarium because Owen's new girlfriend is a doctor, and she's there, and she's the pregnant one that you shoot when you're Ellie. So you bring her back, and then you have to go and then they're like, oh, we need some supplies. So you have to go to the hospital, and you walk through this like bridge in the sky, which is quite a weird bit. But when you get to the hospital, you come up against this like blob who's been like, because they're like, the hospital on the ground floor of the hospital is it's like ground zero of when all this shit took place, because this is where they took everyone when it first started kicking off. And there's this like massive blob of a zombie with like other zombies like coming out of it, like at the end of like The Thing, or like there's a game called not Inside, maybe it was Inside, I can't remember which one it was, where it's just a blob of like arms and limbs and mouths, whatever, and you're like, and there's this bit where it's just like you're in this dark fucking hospital, like Silent Hill style, and you're trying to kill this thing. And that was one of the that was a really cool bit. And anyway, you get all this stuff, you go back, you have to cut her arm off, but she's fine. And then you find out that the little kid, Lev, I think his name is actually a girl that's shaved her head and wants to be a boy. And that's why they're running from this religious sect, is because that's unheard of, basically. You can't have trans people, you can't have girls thinking they're boys, etc. And anyway, they have like an argument, and he gets a boat and runs off to like the island where the Seraphites are from. You chase him down, and at the same time your faction, the wolves, are attacking the island of the Seraphites. So it's all happening at once, and you're able to find Lev. You get him. The girl whose arm was cut off unfortunately dies as you try and survive. You get out of there, the whole island is burnt, and it looks like the Seraphites are gone, basically. And when you get back, that's basically when you find that Ellie's come, who was you, obviously, in the first half of the game, and shot them both. So then you go, and now you're playing as Abby in the theatre bit where she's pointing a gun at Tommy and Ellie. So now you've kind of caught up with yourself. Does that make sense? Because it's kind of like the same 3 days running parallel. And then you have to try and like kill Ellie, and that's weird. And a lot of people had problems with that, which I could kind of get. And then after you kind of beat each other up a bit, you basically like, you beat the shit out of Ellie, and you're like, right, that's it, done. Fuck you. Don't come near me. I don't want to see you again. And you walk out. So she had the opportunity to kill her. She didn't. And then it kind of cuts back to Ellie. Dina's had the kid that she was pregnant with. They're like a lesbian couple with this kid. They're living on a farm. Tommy comes back and he's like, all right, I know where Abby is. She's in California. And they're like, I don't know if we can do it again. So at this point, I thought this is the end of the game. Like they're going to, because it's like, there's quite a nice shot where Tommy and Dina are having an argument, because Tommy's like, I thought to Ellie, he's like, I thought you'd do anything to like revenge for Joe. I thought, you were in this, and now you're telling me you don't want to do it anymore and all this, like, fuck you, whatever. So Dina goes out to have it, shout at him, and the map is just kind of lying there on the table, like California circled, and then it cut to black, and I thought, great ending. I thought that's great, because it's kind of like spinning top a little bit, like, does she, doesn't she?
Yeah.
You don't know. Like, it's tempting because it's right there. But no, it comes back, and then suddenly you're Abby again, and she's trying to find the Fireflies, and then she gets captured by this new group called the Rustlers or something, who are just kind of new. And then it goes back to your Ellie, and you're in California, and you're trying to find Abby, and you get caught by these same Rustlers, and you're able to make it out, and you kind of go through, kill everyone. You find Abby. She's basically been crucified on the beach. You have a big fight with her, and then you're about to kill her. She bites off your fingers, and then basically you decide to just let her go, and she goes off with Lev, the trans kid, and they go off into the distance, and you go back home, and at home Dina has packed up her stuff, so it's just this big empty house, and then you just basically try and play guitar. You realise you can't because your fingers have been bitten off. And it's quite this sad moment because that was her connection to Joel, and you kind of find guitars throughout the game, and she realises that because of this, her violence, basically, that she has lost that now. So she can't even play guitar anymore. She's even lost that connection, and she walks off into the forest, and that's it. That's the end of the game. So it's long, and a lot happens, and there's a lot kind of going on, as you can imagine. I mean, like, that was a really quick summary of it, and I felt like that took ages. But it's good. But it's kind of, I kind of understand the fact that it's like dealing with like consequences and the cycle of violence, and how does that end? Like, eye for an eye leaves the world blind, and all this stuff. But yeah, just what's your reaction to that from what I've just said?
It seems it's very difficult to tell that kind of story within the context of a computer game. To me, it sounds, again, thinking about some of the criticism that I read, it sounds quite ambitious in terms of that flitting between the characters, especially when one's already established. And your audience already feels a connection to that character. Two characters that are opposed. Obviously, the idea there is that by having that experience with both, you see that overarching moral of the story, and you experience it yourself. At the same time, that's something that might work better in traditional fiction or a movie, where you're not then expected, or as some people have felt, forced to play as a character they don't want to play, or have negative experiences, or the experience that they don't expect, basically. So I can see then why people feel that maybe the maker of this game, it's a bit self-indulgent. Actually, it sounds like he wanted to, rather than just kind of like make a good computer game for the existing fan base of the first game, it sounds like he kind of wanted to make his own movie a little bit.
Yeah, well, they're making a Last of Us TV series, I should say that, which has these, which I don't know what it's actually going to be based on, but it is. There's a lot of this comes through the cutscenes and all this. But you're right, like having people, that was the problem, is that having people just play as a character they've become to hate, and then just forcing you to sympathise and empathise with her feels a little strange. But there's also that thing that, like, in terms of movie storytelling, and a lot of people say, like, misogynist movies kind of do this a lot, which is where a woman, like the wife is killed, and it becomes the catalyst for setting out like a revenge story, and the woman's only place in the film was there as a victim in order to instigate the man to do something and kind of carry the film. And it's kind of a reversal in that. So I think, like, when people, like, basically, so the problems being is that people thought the way Joel died was unfair. I don't actually agree with that, because the idea that he pays for his choice of what he did at the hospital, which is essentially dooming mankind, was always like, that was always going to come back to him, if that makes sense. So I think that kind of makes sense. And just like, yeah, all right, getting beaten to death with a golf club or whatever, it's like, well, you wouldn't want to just shoot him in the head or something like that. You'd want to make him like suffer, right? If that's how you want to go. And I don't really blame, and then people like hating Abby for that, I get it from a personal vindictive point of view, but also they kind of hint, like, as you're playing her leading up to it, it's like, oh, we found him and, or fuck him for what he's done. So it's kind of already planted the seed before this happened anyway. There's like, okay, they're probably talking about Joel and what happened in the first game. So it's not like this big shock or surprise that it's that's why it's being done to him. And I think it's important that, I think it's kind of a natural step to have after that, is that was like a major choice, which would have major consequences. But I think having the kind of separate storyline where it's like you go through half the game as Ellie and then you're forced to go through the same time period with Abby, was just like, I don't know, like if they had it running simultaneously, like you're jumping from one to the other, I could maybe, I don't know, like appreciate it more. But I think playing that, but then gameplay wise, that probably would be very difficult to do. But I think having it in like this kind of bulk of like, here's all Ellie stuff, now here's all Abby stuff, and as well like stupid things in terms of the gameplay. But when you're Abby, you find like tons of like upgrade pills, because obviously you've upgraded Ellie like loads, and they don't want you to like feel like you're starting completely fresh with Abby, which you are, which is annoying. So it's like, rather than make me pick up all these like rare upgrade pills and I'm picking up like 20 or 30 at a time, why not just have me start at a higher level or something of stuff that's already unlocked or the equivalent thereof in what I've done with Ellie with her. All right, it's not realistic. It's like, oh, okay, but it's a computer game. But but people got really funny about it, because it was like Abby's got like massive muscular arms, and then people are thinking, oh, she's gay or something. So, why is everyone gay? It's like, well, she's actually not gay. Ellie's gay. Like, just because Abby has like these big muscular arms, it doesn't actually mean that she's gay.
She could be a bloke though.
I mean, it is like she is like a lot more stacked than a lot of the blokes in the game. But at the same time, it's like, that doesn't, like, why do people get hung up on that? It's a bit like, whatever. Like, it's not. That's the thing as well. If you're living in a world where like only the tough survive, then surely it makes sense to get tougher.
And if she's been training, right, to track down this Joel and take him out.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
dedicating her time to getting hench.
Exactly. Like, it makes sense, right? But yeah, I mean, I didn't mind playing as Abby, and I did kind of enjoy how it kind of set things up for you to feel guilty about what you've already done as Ellie. But I did think it kind of hit it a bit too hard. So like playing with the dog, for instance, that you've already killed basically down the line. The fact that it's like the woman's pregnant and they're like, oh, should you be going on these missions when you're pregnant? Oh, what about the baby and stuff like that? It's like, okay, I get it. I killed her. I get it. That's fine. But then like I think for me, the moment where I'm kind of chasing Ellie around in the theatre, I kept dying, and that was really frustrating. And I was like, I don't like this bit where I'm actively acting against Ellie, because I resonate more with Ellie than I do with Abby. And I'm like, am I supposed to be feeling like I'm on Abby's side here because I'm playing with her against Ellie? That felt weird.
A lot of people said that really just made them feel like this was just a miserable experience. It was really downbeat and just no fun. As one guy said in his review, he pointed out, Naughty Dog said, "Fun is not a word we like to use." And this guy was like, "Yeah, it shows." But they kind of, I think they said, like, we try to engage, create an engaging world and experience. I think to me, like, overall, it's kind of the classic thing of following up something that's been extremely successful. And you've got those kind of, artistic versus commercial decisions to make. How much do you service the expectations of your existing fans versus how much do you make what you want to make and tell the story that you want to make? And I think within the context of a computer game, that seems to be more problematic just by virtue of the fact that you're expecting people to invest more time and that you're expecting them to literally have that experience in the shoes of those characters.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I just think when I think about the structure of it, I think maybe they could have done things a bit differently that, I don't know, like when I think of like, okay, fine. So Joel gets killed. And I'm not saying like Joel shouldn't have got killed. Obviously he was gutting, and the whole point of it was that it gets you like personally angry because that's who you were in the first game. Fine. That could still happen, but maybe it's a case of like you didn't see who did it, and then at the same time you're playing as someone else in parallel to what you're doing with Ellie, and then suddenly you realise that your second character you're playing in the past, and it ends with you being the one that kills Joel or something like that, so that it feels like that you've earned the empathy that you have towards Abby without you being forced to have to empathise. Like, you know, look, it's bad, violence is bad and all that stuff. And also like, it's a bit shit to make a game which is pure violence and that you go around killing and horribly, you know, torturing people or whatever, and then saying violence is bad, but this game is the most violent thing. It's a bit weird.
There does seem to be a bit of a paradox involved in that. That hasn't really been that well thought through.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, like, apparently the cycle of revenge, Druckmann based on his childhood in Israel. And I guess you kind of see that with this is making some very broad parallels here, but with, you know, the religious nuts, the Seraphites or whatever. And, you know, I won't go too far down that road, but it's like, yeah, okay. And I thought more would be made of that. Like, I really wanted these, like, separated from the Israeli thing, just talking about the story itself. I really wanted these religious nuts to be like nuts. Like, they're kind of hinted at as being nuts, but it's like, okay, crazy. And then the rustlers or whatever it is at the end, that's what I mean. That whole end level in California, I didn't really particularly feel like was needed. And I just went out guns blazing. So I was like, I just want to get this over with now. I just felt way too long. But yeah, this new faction of Ramblers or whatever the fuck it was, and not heard of. You don't hear anything about them in the game, and they're just this like biker gang that have basically put people into like slavery. And everyone's like, man, they're fucked up. And I'm like, yeah, are they? Like, what have they? Like, okay, yeah, they're like treating people as slaves, but it's like, yeah, probably there would be people like that. But we've seen like cannibals, like people breeding people ever to like eat. Like in the first game, it's like I kind of wanted that kind of level of fucked up shit, which I didn't felt like I got.
Which is a bit more escapist as well, isn't it? Right, than having to engage with something that feels a little bit more, maybe, you know, realistic.
And I think as well, like with the first game, like Ellie was this point of like a bit of like, yeah, like a breath of fresh air or like a little bit of lightheartedness, but there's none of that in the second game. Which does make it like pure down, and it does make it super miserable. And it doesn't really feel like there's any actual like hope. Like the hope of the game is that people stop killing each other, and then you go, and the whole game is you killing people. And that's the kind of thing. It's like, you know, you kill all these like nobodies, but it's like one of them could be, you know, have like a sister that's going to get you back for what you did. And it's like, yeah, but it's not about that. It's just about these important players in the story. Or
the dog's wife.
Yeah, the dog's wife, yeah. So I don't know. That's why I like with something like this, I'm like, I kind of get what it's trying to do. I don't think it particularly has more of the weight or the engagement the first game did. I think it was too long, and it did kind of stick around too long for me. But it did play well. It was great. And to be honest, I did really enjoy the story. And I liked the idea of, you know, there's a bit when Ellie and Abby are fighting towards the end and they're like drowning each other and you're having to like tap X. And I'm like, I'm not sure who I'm tapping X or tapping square or whatever for. Like, who do I want to be who? It's like, I'm kind of playing it and I'm like...
conflicted.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what I want here, like, or who I'm controlling. And I suppose that's, you know, part of it and part of playing with the idea of like, kind of bringing you into the game.
It sounds to me a bit like, you know, again, people saying it's a bit self-indulgent, that really he's tried to, if it's one guy, I don't know, what's he called, Druckmann?
Yeah, Neil Druckmann. Well, there was another writer who worked on Westworld. I forget her name, sorry, but then there's two other guys who like co-directed it. But yeah, I mean, I think the idea is that Neil Druckmann is the guiding hand.
It sounds like he's tried to, write something more complex than he's got the talent and experience to handle. And maybe that's a bit indulgent, and maybe just stick to making a simpler game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it. Like, I'm fine with the revenge story.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. And I'm fine with it being like, an evil person who's not necessarily evil, who has their own like stuff. Because that's the whole thing of what makes a great villain, right? Is that the villain has to believe that what they're doing is right.
Yes.
And that's what makes an interesting villain.
Yeah.
And we have that in a sense of it's Abby, but she's not a villain. You spend half the game with her.
Yeah.
She's just as much part of like your experience of the game as any is. And that's not to take away from the stuff that you do as Abby as well, because those game sequences, as I said, like the stuff in the hospital, the sniper battle against Tommy's good, some great little set pieces and stuff like that. And as a character, she's great. But there's part of me that just thinks, I don't know, like it could have just been handled a bit differently. It's a bit of a cheap shot to suddenly go, right, now you're going to be playing as Abby. And you're going to be spending the next 10, 12 hours playing as the person that you hate. And it's like, okay, there might have been a better way and a cleverer way of doing this than just being like, here you go, like, good luck. I didn't mind it, but I can see why people would have a problem with it. But it was fine. It was good.
So what would you like to see in a third game?
I think in the third game, I would like to see Ellie being like Joel's age, basically as he was in the first game. And yeah, not necessarily the same plot of like you have to escort this kid who's, immune across the country or whatever. But I think her kind of coming to terms with who she is. So there's an element of like PTSD and all this stuff in the second game, and how she needs that cathartic release of like trying to kill Abby to make her, kind of feel better, but it's probably not going to do her any good and all this stuff. And that's part of the realization and the part of her character arc. But I don't know. I think if there's a third one, I think it's more that, it's about Ellie kind of being a bit more like gruff, how Joel started the first game with, which is like being a bit of a smuggler, a bit of a loner, and basically learning to be, learning to love again or something like that, whatever that might be. It could be that it plays more into the fact that she's supposed to be the cure. Maybe it's something that, there's someone who's a neurosurgeon or something that she has to get to, and finally like give the consent to like die and save, and like for the sake of humanity, give herself up and sacrifice herself or something like that for the cure. Something like that would probably be pretty good. And how, she's kind of chosen this life where she could have been happy with Dina and with the baby and all this stuff, but she can't do that to herself or whatever. And maybe she's still struggling with the fact that she never did kill Abby. Maybe it's the fact that Abby comes back and they have to work together. I mean, I thought that's how the second game would end, to be honest, is that they would like work together to kill the Ruffles, or whatever they're called, the Rustlers or whatever. But yeah, that didn't really happen. You just kind of fight each other and swan off. I think that would make an interesting third game anyway, something along those lines. And maybe it's a case of like the fungus virus has got stronger. It's got like a lot worse. It's mutated or something like that, even more so. And things are like a lot worse. So it kind of forces the fact that she has to do something. And I think it would be cool if the people who are infected and all fucked up with all the fungal stuff and their heads are sprouted open, actually slowly turn back into humans. And then you realise like all those fucking things that you killed along the way and everything
Could have been saved.
Yeah. No, it doesn't matter by that point. You killed hundreds of people. I should say as well, like, maybe I'll save it. Actually, I'll save it for Nerd Corner. Yeah, because there's a couple of Nerd Corner bits which I think you might find quite interesting. But yeah, what do you think? Knowing, I'm going to turn the question back on you. But what do you think, knowing what you know now about like the game and the story, and all this stuff? What would you think would be an exciting third act?
Probably, like we've kind of hinted at, that exploration around this sort of causality and this cycle of violence. I was just thinking there, you said something about, any one of those people that has died could trigger a third game where someone goes looking for revenge on their behalf. But what if you said, there's this idea that there's one person that could help to unlock the cure for humanity? What if she's killed that person? Could that be explored in some way? I do like the idea of maybe putting the gamer in the shoes of all the paws of the family of dogs that have been left motherless or fatherless. Maybe some like a pack of Alsatian puppies going on a kind of revenge spree. I'd like to see those monsters become less derivative as well. Let's make them more mushroom based. They do. So one of the enemies that I didn't talk about that I should have, I was going to leave to this segment. There's a new one called Stalkers. Okay. Which are pretty cool. They were my favourite. You only really run into them probably 7 or 8 times maybe throughout the whole game. And thank God, because they are a fucking nightmare. Basically, when you do your listening mode, they keep very still, so you don't actually see them unless they suddenly move. But they will try and like jump you. Okay. So you might be walking down, and then all of a sudden you see like this little head like coming in and out from behind a corridor, and you've just got your flashlight, right? So you said, what the fuck? Then you put on your hearing mode, and you're like looking around, and like you can just see something scuttle in your listening mode from one bit to another, and then disappear. Yeah. And you're like, fuck, it's Stalkers. And what they'll do is they'll try and get the jump on you. And once they do, all the rest of them will start coming towards you. So I think that was I think they were in the Left Behind DLC of the first game, which I won't go into now. But that was a really good enemy. But yeah, I was kind of thinking, I kind of want to see, like, where does this go? Where more does this end up? And they've got that big giant blob thing, right? But essentially that's just a fucking big blob. Like, it'd be good to like have more of these like fungus creatures around that are a bit more different from what we had in the first game. I mean, like, there was a couple of new additions in this game, but not really. Could have done a bit more with it, I think. As you said, more monsters,
make it a bit more fucked up. Yeah.
It's fun designing new horrible monsters.
Yeah. Okay, Dan, should we go into Nerd Corner?
What, together?
Hold my hand. Let's take a trip.
Can I have
That's not my hand.
Oh, let's go there.
And welcome to Nerd Corner. Dan, I've got some nerdy facts for you.
Okay.
Do you want to hear them? I'm kind of, I haven't got them written down in front of me, but I'm going to tell you them anyway. So there is, in terms of the gameplay, I'll kind of get that out of the way first, but you kind of unlock stuff once you've completed the game. And there are different modes, such as you can play the game in mirror mode, which essentially reflects the whole world as you play through it, which is quite interesting. You can put a different graphic style over the top. So you can do it 8-bit. You can do it as a watercolor painting. You could do it as those LucasArts style adventure game things. You could do it black and white. You could do it neon. You can do it in all these different ways, which is quite interesting, I thought. And you can have you open up yourself to doing like unlimited ammo options, all this stuff. But one of the interesting things you can do is obviously there's all the difficulty settings. There's a one which is called Grounded, I think it's called, and that you don't have listening mode. It's very hard to find any stuff to craft along the way, and yeah, etc. It's more easier to die. So that's supposed to be like the more realistic one. I did that, or whatever the hardest difficulty was in the first game, and I actually found it a much better experience than I did the first time around, because it felt a lot more, I was paying much more attention to the fact that I didn't want to die. But there is a new mode which came out recently, which is a Perma-Death Mode.
Death? Pamela?
Perma-Death,
oh.
Which means that once you're dead, you're dead. You have to start the game again. Which would
That's
be
the thing.
Frustrating.
I forget about that about modern games. You know, it's not like in the old days where the game was like you can die. Games now seem to be like, basically, if you're willing to put the hours in, you find a way to complete it, right?
Mm.
So
Yes.
you're saying there could be a situation where you've put in 25 hours and you're like, game over, you're dead.
Yeah.
No continues.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. Which would be harsh. But
fair.
People have done it already. They've completed it that way. So, well done. Hats off to them. But the real nerdy thing I was going to talk to you about was the fact that this was all inspired by a David Attenborough thing for the BBC that he did. One of the many things where ants, zombie ants, if you type in zombie ants, David Attenborough, or whatever, it will come up. But they have this same thing where basically they essentially like get this infection and they get this like fungus mold on them. Other ants literally pick them up and carry them out of the colony.
Yeah.
And they sit there and they basically get these like weird formations on their heads and bodies, and they start moving independently, and they become zombie ants, and they can infect the rest. Yeah. And that's where it came from. So basically, whoever saw that, Neil Druckmann or whatever, and said like, what if that applied to humans? And that's where it came from. That's the kind of nerdy little tidbit there for you.
That is incredible.
It's good, isn't it?
It's well, it's not great if you're an ant.
No. Well, if you're an ant, then you're pretty gutted anyway, aren't you? Not got much going on. So Dan, what's your final review on this, having heard what you've heard and not actually played the game? I'd be interested in what you think about it. But I think it's my turn actually, isn't it, to give you a
final impression,
a voice to do it as your final impression. So I think I want you, seeing as we're doing it about ants, why do you do it in the voice of an ant? whatever kind of voice an ant conjures up to you.
Well, they're mostly mute, so I believe.
Are they?
I've not heard one speaking, so I'll just have to transmit it through my antennae or something.
If they did speak, if they were 6 foot tall.
All right. Okay, here we go. I suggest that you don't invest too much time in this divisive game. Just stay at home and do a nice jigsaw.
Sound like someone's grandma. Grandmother ant.
If anyone's grandmother sounds like that, then please take a double-barreled shotgun, blow the mother away. She has been infected by a deadite.
By a deadite. Lovely. Well, I'm going to give you my final impression, and that is that this was, I thought it was a fantastic game, but not as good as the first game. Too long, unfortunately. Too on the nose. in terms of its messaging. It was trying to hammer things home too much. There was no subtlety whatsoever. Not bothered about the LGBTQ thing. I mean, I'm not bothered about stuff like that anyway. I don't feel like with the whole thing with Lev, I don't really know what it was supposed to add, apart from the fact of it's like, oh, he's, it's all about like the victim. Like, he's a victim because he's trans. Like, okay, fine. I don't know. I just don't think it was as clever as it actually thought it was. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I do think it was good. I enjoyed playing it, and I liked the idea of violence leading to more violence in a world where that is quite apparent, and also in the Last of Us world where you're just constantly going around killing people and just trying to survive. And the fact that all this stuff has consequences is good. And I liked the general Ellie character arc. I like the Abby character arc, but I think it's a lot of good set pieces and a thoroughly enjoyable game. And it is very impressive on a sheer technical visual standpoint. But it's not perfect. That's kind of my final impression. So Dan, let's hear some of the other reviews from other people who aren't us.
I hate it.
Reviews. Going to kick off with one here. See if you think they liked it or loathed it.
Okay.
So this is Miss A.L. Davison.
Hello, Miss Davidson.
It's pretty grim and gruesome. The deaths are a lot more hard-hitting. If you shoot someone in the leg and they bleed out, they'll scream and writhe for several seconds. There's more fear in their faces when you kill them. They sometimes beg for their lives. The people watching their friends die are more authentically messed up by it. Stuff like that. Not something that will bother everyone, but I'd say that's the nastiest bit of the game. As for the rest, basically it's a game about how much you can mess yourself up in the pursuit of revenge. It's a game that hurts you, then tells you to get over it, because staying angry will only ever leave you unsatisfied and unhappy. It's true to life, more so than most of us would like, and at times it's frustrating, tedious, or even in-your-face insulting. The game doesn't care if you like it or not. It doesn't care if it makes you feel bad, and it doesn't care about making you feel better. Pretty much every criticism I've seen against the game so far can be answered with, yes, I know, that's literally the point. Once you get your head around that, it achieves exactly what I believe it sets out to achieve.
I think that was a positive one for it. It's basically saying it does what it says on the tin. What do you expect?
5 out of 5.
Yeah. I kind of agree.
I seem to like the fact that you really see the fear in the faces of people as they scream in agony.
Yeah, I mean, it's very visceral. It's a proper visceral game. But yeah, I kind of get it.
Here's a bad one. Here is a bad one. Peekaboo gave it only 1 out of 5. This is a review with the title, "This is the game that was given full marks by companies afraid of Sony. Silly, just silly." Here's the review. "I can't begin to tell you how disappointed I am with this. First things first, I won't drop major spoilers. Everything you loved from the first game is gone. Compassion, caring, and father figure family unit is gone, and is replaced by how bad humanity can lower itself. So if you're after what made the first game good, forget it. You'll have 10 hours of depression."
Right? Is it what made the first game good? I don't know. Okay. Sure. I don't think I was playing it for the compassion, but I kind of see where he's coming from.
Did you enjoy the I noticed that it only took him 10 hours to complete the game, Sam.
Fuck off. 10 hours. Cutscenes. Ridiculous. There was, I do kind of get how, like, I guess a lot of people felt like they got fucked over by Sony, only because, like, in the trailers, for instance, one of the trailers ends with, like, someone putting a hand on Ellie's shoulder. She's like, "What are you doing here?" And then it's Joel, and he's like, "You know, I'd let you go out by yourself, would you?" And then it ended. And so it was kind of hinting that Joel is in the actual game coming along with you. Whereas in the actual game, the hand belongs to, like, this guy, Jesse or whatever, who's one of the guys who's the dad of the baby who gets killed later on. And he's like, "Hey, I'm trying to find Tommy," or whatever. And a lot of people were like, Sony literally, like, fucked us over. But it's like, well, it's just a trailer. But I do kind of understand that they totally manipulated how you felt about everything.
People said they showed some scenes, and they'd aged Joel as well to make it look like he's there as an older dude. And I mean, that doesn't happen in the gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the specific bits, but he is, like, old in the game, because he is old, because it's like you see him and then he gets killed, and then, like,
they made him older.
Yeah, and then, like, whatever, I don't know, like a month goes by, and then that's where the bulk of the game is. But yeah, maybe they did make him even older. I don't know. Maybe.
And people said that Sony embargoed, basically, it's like some of the key sections of the game. So some of those big, I saw it got loads of, like, 10 out of 10 reviews and everything. But the complaint seems to be that people were reviewing based on basically a disingenuous representation of the game.
Yeah, but I find it's weird. Like, I was reading a Guardian review, but I think what's the name, Keizer McDonald, I think, and it was basically saying how by having an embargo and making sure that you're not allowed to talk about certain points takes away from the actual discussion that should be surrounding the game itself.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, you're taking away discussion points on something that you're saying is important and needs to be discussed. Which I kind of get, because they don't want to give away plot points, but it's like, you're kind of defeating. Yeah, people should be allowed to talk about it, basically. Sorry.
Here's another bad review. Corrupted AI. 1 out of 5.
Right.
Graphics are good. Mechanics good. Gameplay is literally Last of Us 1.5 because they didn't even bother to add anything. Just a jump. Seriously? That's all they bothered to add? Moving on to the story now. Story makes little to no sense. It's absolutely ridiculous. Muscular transgender woman kills Joel with a golf club just 1 hour in. They must have really wanted to get rid of him if it was just 1 hour in. Here's a sad fact. Sam, can we pipe in some violin here, maybe? Some stirring violin.
I'm just doing my voice.
A Korean streamer that lost his father at a young age cut up his disc of the game because of the poor portrayal of Joel and the way they brutally killed him. Baffles me, to say the least. They killed him so early on. If you're going to kill a character, Naughty Dog, please at least do it the right way. They had to pick one of the most sadistic ways to kill Joel. He could have died protecting Ellie or something, but no, some transgender girl that is decked out with muscles kills him. This game has some of the most cringe story and writing I've ever seen in my entire life. It's like some 9-year-old's crappy fan fiction. The ending has to be probably the most disappointing ending I've ever seen in gaming history. Ellie kills hundreds, if not thousands, to get to the person who killed Joel, just to spare her life in the end. She has risked her life to get to Abby, just to spare her in the end. Really, Naughty Dog? Really?
I mean, again, there's some valid points in that. Not so much, like, I think it's fine to kill Joel early and the way they did, because that's the point, is a lot of people kind of got hung up on the fact that it's not like a ceremonious end or something to him. And it's like, yeah, that's good. Like,
That's what's shocking.
It should be a shitty like death, because that's kind of what they're trying to go for. Is that they want you to hate Abby, they want you to like stir up all these things like it's not fair and stuff like that, rather than having this like heroic death. And it's not always like that. Like that's not, it can't, and that's like, it's kind of like giving, it's weird because they're like, that would be more fanboy service if they were to do that. But but whatever. But I think that is the problem I have. They also had it with Uncharted, right? Which was they made this Indiana Jones character, like he's all this like suave, like hey, whatever, I'm this cool guy, whatever, and like it's nice, funny dude. But during the course of 4 games, you've literally killed thousands of people. He's like a mass murderer, serial killer.
Yeah.
And he has no problem with just decimating hundreds of people, and then he'll like crack smart about it. Zero fucking consequence, has zero weight on his mind whatsoever. Does not care about killing all these people. And a lot of people like thought that was a bit weird. In the same breath, it's a computer game, like whatever. But when it's kind of like what we were saying before. It's weird in a game where it's talking about violence is bad, but you have to kill all these people. And as he says, like at the end, you don't kill the one person it matters. It's like you've literally just slaughtered so many people to get to this point. But then the idea is she's not really fighting Abby as a person, but like it's more of like the idea of Abby and what she kind of represents rather than the person herself. If that makes sense, it's more like a character beat, rather than the reality of someone. So if it's the person that killed John, so I'm going to kill them. It's like, what does that actually mean to her? But I kind of get what this guy's saying as well. Any more?
I've got one more. It's a bit long, but this was the most balanced one that I could find. And I thought this was quite interesting because this chap, he's an Amazon Vine guy, which are those people, they get it up front, don't they? And usually they have a track history of decent reviews. So he kind of does a little update as he goes through the game. So see if you agree with this. He's given it 4 out of 5. Best looking PS4 story game ever. Here's the review. As I loved the original game, I was skeptical about this one. Would I even like it? As I'm at the early stages of the game, here's my initial review. It looks gorgeous. If someone told me I was playing on the PS5, I would have believed them. Story reminds you of how the original ended, where they are now, and you get invested to the story and enemies, starting off easy with some runners before moving on to the harder clickers. There's a lot to take in at first as they move the story on by 7 years and introduce you to a lot more characters, but it plays out well. Has all the signs of a masterpiece, but only time will tell. Update. Must be about halfway, I'm guessing, of this huge game. One of my favourite ever games. Only criticism is the way the story keeps going back in time. 2 months ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, etc.
Yeah, true.
I would rather play it in sequence. 5 years ago, then moving forward. But other than that, I see no faults at all. Overall, I'm not convinced by the story. In the first one, you were on the same side. In this switching between two characters who are trying to kill each other, it does not work for me. Would you play a game of football with one team in the first half and a different in the second half without being able to control who wins?
Quite reductive, but yeah.
A summary after completing the game. The story starts off really well, but loses itself later on, with changing characters and going back a few years. But the gameplay, for a third-person shooter with some puzzles, is one of the best games available. Overall, I enjoyed it, and will play it again once it comes out on the PS5.
I agree. I'll probably play it again if it comes out on PS5 and get one. I think, it's fair enough. I think the kind of whole thing with these games in particular is that it's about the characters, and they do kind of flesh out the characters quite well. Like with Abby, for instance, it's like, she's the whole thing after, like, killing Joel didn't have zero effect on her either. Like, she's the whole game, this is why she kind of helps out the Seraphites, right? It's that she wants to, like, believe she's still a good person because she has tortured and slowly beaten a man to death.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sit right with her. And also people kind of view her differently because they've seen that side of her. And she feels a bit differently because she probably didn't even realise she had that side. And yeah, it's her kind of dealing with that and trying to be okay with herself and all this. So it's
Do you think you could? Do you think you could batter a man to death with a golf club?
Who have you talked to?
What would be your modus operandi for a revenge killing?
I think a golf club is a pretty nifty way of doing it, but I would just get worried as I'm doing it that it's going to just bend. I want something that's going to be a bit more,
a bit more dependable.
Yeah, exactly. A baseball bat or something.
You want to make sure you're going to get the job done, don't you?
Yeah. So you're asking me if I'm going to beat a man to death, what would I use?
You don't have to beat him.
Okay.
Many options available to you.
You're asking me how I'd kill a man?
Essentially, yes. A man that's wronged you, that you've got a burning desire to avenge someone else's death against.
In all honesty, I think, and I always kind of thought this, I think knives are fucking horrible. I think the idea of stabbing and slicing someone to death, I think is always, even though it's the most common thing, especially here in the UK where there are no guns and whatever, it's always knife crime. I think knives, there's something really fucking horrible about a knife. People talk about gun crime and all that and stuff. It's yeah, I get it. But knife crime, it feels dirty. Basically, there's something really horribly base about the whole thing.
It was very visceral, horrible, painful way to go, probably.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I think...
Imagine that blade just scratching away between your rib cage.
But there's one bit where, in the game, when you fight Abby, that's with a knife. But there's one bit in the game where you're playing as Abby, you're kind of trying to kill someone on the Seraphite island. And I can't remember what you used, but maybe you did use a bowl or something. I can't remember. Maybe you used different things. You basically have to batter this man to death, and he's his jaw is ripped off at one point, and he's still kind of going for you. And it's I was just thinking, fucking hell, this really is a battle to the death. And it, with the knife slashes between Ellie and Abby at the end. You really feel it. And I just think, it's just something about a knife which is horrific.
Wow.
So I'd use a knife.
There we go.
I really want to torture someone. Yeah. But I think that's it, Dan. That's pretty intense. But I'm interested in what other people think.
How they'd kill people.
A can of worms. Yeah, how would you kill someone?
How would you? I'd probably stick someone in a rape cage.
What's that?
It's just a small cage where they can't turn around. Maybe 10 or 12 men come in and brutally sodomise them until they die of internal trauma.
That thing?
It is in my house.
Your cage? It's your fucking bedroom.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's go and see what we're doing next week.
Yes.
And I think we're going to be doing a movie now because we've done a game.
Yeah.
We did TV before that, which is kind of movie-ish, but I think we're going to try and do one from each segment now, kind of going forward.
Let's do a movie, yeah.
Yeah. Let's do a movie. Can I click the magical button? Oh. Okay. Okay. Yeah, fine. Sorry, that was the old one. So let's come up with a new one, which is pretty cool. Actually, I wouldn't mind watching it. I think you'll like it, Dan.
Okay.
It is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, yeah, good.
Yeah, that'd be a good one to do. And I did a fucking dissertation or something on Texas Chainsaw. So,
did you?
Yeah, I might see if I can dig that out. I don't think I have it. But the idea of the family unit and how it's represented in horror movies of that time in America. But
interesting.
It's a bit too highbrow, to be honest.
maybe just give us the conclusion.
Yeah, well, I have to reread it. I've fucking forgotten it. But yeah, well, I guess like next week, then we'll be joining Leatherface and getting down
and the gang.
Imagine loads of tiny little knives killing you. It's basically what a chainsaw is, isn't it? Yeah, we'll get into it. I'd be interested to do the sequels as well, but let's do this first one first. It's a favourite. Well, that's it from us, guys. And remember, oddcastoddballs@gmail.com. Dan, is there anything you kind of want to say? Conclusion?
No,
fine. That was the last of us 2. See what I did?
Also us.
Yeah, we don't have to say it again. So I'm saying that was what we just said was the last of us 2.
Oh, yeah, but just in case, just explain.
Yeah, we ruined it. All right, thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Oddcast, guys. We're part of a New Winter group, so head on over to anewwinter.com to check out our other shows. Go to patreon.com/anewwinter to support the network. You can email us at oddcastoddballs@gmail.com and follow this and our other shows on Twitter and Instagram @anewwinter. So, see you next time on the Oddcast.